So hello everyone on YouTube, MainManSWE here, hoping you're all doing well. A kind viewer here, Mr. Shank, had a really cool question that I think maybe quite a lot of my viewers would be interested in. He asks, is starting the game with Kazuya an okay idea with this many matchups? Or should I focus my effort elsewhere? Also, buy your son a sandwich. He gave me a generous donation. Thank you very much, Shank. So this is interesting. If you're new to Tekken, is it worth starting out with Kazuya, or should you go with someone else when there are so many matchups? Well, what level of commitment are you ready to give the game? Even if you're not ready to commit a lot of time, sweat and tears, you can go with Kazuya if you just feel that the character is really cool. You like his design, and no matter what, you want to play Kazuya. Doesn't matter if you want to put down a week or 20 years, play Kazuya. But if you go in and you're like, I'd love to win, I don't like losing. And to be fair, most people have this to some degree. And some people have it a lot, I must win. I get really angry if I don't win. If you go into playing Tekken online in player matches or ranked, whatever, and you play Kazuya and you're a beginner, you're going to lose a lot. You're going to easily lose more matches than you win. I mean, I used to say to my students, I've coached a lot of people in Tekken. A lot of them have played Mishima's, Kazuya in particular. He's a very popular character. But I usually tell them, and I exaggerate a little bit, and I say that you're going to have to be ready to lose 1,000 matches before you win one. It takes a very, very long time to start and just understand the very basics of playing Kazuya. And that sounds weird because, as most people say on forums who don't really understand the character, they say that, well, it's just about doing a 50-50. You just do, a hell sweep or a mid, and you can launch, or you trip them, and it's brain dead. And I'm going to try and explain this in very simple words so everyone understands that what those people don't understand is that when my students go online, or beginner Kazuya players, the opponent just doesn't stand still waiting for a mix-up. What the opponent does is play a very aggressive Tekken playstyle, which a lot of beginners and intermediate players do, because playing defensively in Tekken is extremely hard due to the amount of characters, who learns all of these matchups. So you don't want to block. What you want to do is attack, because that puts the burden on the opposite side. Your opponent has to have the defense, because I don't have any defense. I'm a beginner. I'm an intermediate. Too many characters, too many moves. So I attack all the time. You deal with it. That's what you see in beginner and intermediate. So what all my Kazuya students do, and many of them highly skilled players, very technical, but they're stuck in green, yellow ranks. The majority of Kazuya players, and he's the second most popular character in the game in terms of picks, but most of them are stuck in beginner and intermediate. You don't really see too many Kazuyas in the higher levels. And this is because they all choke due to the character's very design. Kazuya is a great character if you're committed to learning Tekken, because that's what he is. He's just a very, very fundamental Tekken. He has no panic tools, press a button to get out of a situation easily. He has none of that. He doesn't have poking to keep it. Do you know how important it is to be able to keep your opponent in check with pokes and strings? He can't do that. It takes him 20 frames on average to get his good moves out. If you're not using one of those moves, you're using a jab, which is high, or a while standing 4, where you have to duck into it or do a very complicated input. It's it's very, very difficult. So what happens to most beginner and intermediate Kazuyas is that people are, just being super aggressive towards them, and they don't know, the matchup, or they crumble under pressure, and that, deadly 50-50 mix-up, hell sweep, or mid-launcher, they never get any, opportunity to use it, because the opponent is always in their face. Always in their face. So there's this misunderstanding that Kazuya is an easy character. It just isn't. People don't just stand still like a training dummy and wait for the mix-up. Everyone just goes in your face with Alyssa, Eliza, insert these pressure-heavy characters. And so Kazuya is great if you're very committed to learning Tekken, because he will force you to learn all of the matchups. It's like you say with lab characters like Yoshimitsu, Zafin, and Xiaoyu. When they go to practice mode, they lab their own character. They lab Yoshi, Xiaoyu, blah blah, to learn new mix-ups. A into B into D into E into F into Z into flowcharts. What a Kazuya player does is just go into character A, character B, character C, character D, character E, learn the basics of a matchup, because you will rely entirely on timing. You don't have the many moves. You don't have the crazy mix-ups. You'll use 5 attacks. You do not rely on a large arsenal of moves. You rely on the question of when. When do you place your attack? That is Kazuya. That's it. That's its timing. And you cannot know the timing without knowing your opponent's character. You can't do that. So that's why there's just an insane amount of labbing required, and most of them will fail, because how many people can learn all of these matchups? And that goes back to your question, is it worth it with all of the matchups? Well, we have, the data is clear. Kazuya players do horribly online. It's one of the absolute worst characters in terms of win-loss ratio online. And do you see him in tournaments? Even the best players in the world don't really pick Kazuya, because it's technically not really worth it. The execution demands are too high. So I just want to go back to say that you should play Kazuya if you really enjoy his design and you think is really cool. Then it's worth it no matter what. And if you really want to learn Tekken, you're passionate about Tekken, he will force you to learn this game. There are no crutches with him. He forces you to learn this game and everything about it. But if you can't handle losing, if you don't like losing, you get angry, then I would say, I would not recommend Kazuya. I would recommend going with someone more in between, because we have those sorts of characters as well, where there's some form of middle ground. And Kazumi, I find, is a good example of that, and Shaheen. They're very fundamentally based characters, so they do sort of what Kazuya does, but there are no execution requirements. And they have some of the more generic tools that Kazuya doesn't. Kazuya forces a super hardcore playstyle, whereas Shaheen and Kazumi, they also are very fundamental, but they have the basic Tekken universal tools. Like Shaheen, down for 2, 13 frame, down for 1, and he has a hop kick. That does wonders to make it less stressful for you to play. And you have Kazumi, also very, fundamental, like Kazuya, but has a hop kick, has a down for 1, has a invincible down for 2 to get out of trouble, has some strings, So if you want a little bit more of a middle ground, I would recommend Kazumi and Shaheen. If you want something Kazuya-esque, but it's definitely much easier. But Kazuya is just pretty much as hardcore as it gets in terms of everything being as hard as possible. No panic tools, no pokes, no strings. Your down forward 1 is 15 frames. You have no down forward 2, no generic down forward 2. You have his down forward 2, which is minus 12. Always taking risks. You have no hop kick. You have no easy launch. Just have the electric. And then just mastering electric and wave dash on both sides. How much time do you have? It's like, it's one of the most misunderstood characters if you go to forums. Everyone thinks he's easy, but yeah. Of course, none of them have spent any time with the character. So I hope that answers your question. I went into some detail. And if you want to play Kazuya, you know, I'd love that. I mean, I love this character. Kazuya and Brian, to me, are like my children. You know, well, okay, not like my son Wilhelm, but they are very dear to my heart for many reasons. They are just fantastic characters. But they are as difficult as it gets in this game. I mean, make no mistake. Do not listen to people in forums who think Brian is brain dead or Kazuya is brain dead. In the end, they are as hard as it gets in this game. So it depends. Do you want to win no matter what? Or can you enjoy yourself? You know, and how much do you want to learn about Tekken? Picking a character like Noctis, Leroy, Katarina, you don't have to learn much at all and still succeed. So it really depends on what you want to do. But I hope you enjoyed this answer.